help you, help me, help you. We go. So, off into the unknown. Before we leave, we're going to listen to a voice from the great beyond. A good friend of mine. His name's Alfred.
Good evening. I am delighted you could participate in our excursion. To avoid possible mayhem, please pay attention. Standing may cause vertigo. Don't do it. Keep your arms and legs inside so you don't fall out the window, especially the rear window. And finally, smoking and alcoholic beverages are strictly for the birds.
That was Alfred. I'm sure you know who Alfred is, right? Alfred Hitchcock. I died, then he died. We somehow met. He let me put him into the tour. He's quite a nice gentleman. But off we go into the unknown. I don't know where we're going, but Howard, he does take us past some very nice places. But I will start this tour with 4 different types of hauntings that you may want to know about, and you'll definitely start to notice a pattern as I get into these stories that we have of Ki-West. We do have a residual type of haunting. That would be the first one. When somebody dies, their energy is blasted into the atmosphere, and it creates an imprint at a specific location at a specific time. So that's when you have the sightings. The footsteps have been heard, crying and laughter, but it does replay over and over like a recording. Second type of haunting would be an intelligent type of haunting. Somebody died. Maybe it was a very tragic death, like a murder, very sudden. They know that they're dead and they know that we're here and they're able to communicate with us. So there's a connection there. But a third type of haunting, some of you have probably already heard about this. It's poltergeist. That's a German word meaning noisy spirits. One spirit or multiple spirits, they gather up all of this energy and they move things inside of your house. They'll start moving around furniture, maybe even start fires inside of your own home. But the last type of haunting, the fourth one, it's not very common, is shadow people. You have these dark masses of blackness, no human characteristics or facial characteristics. You see these dark masses out of the corner of your eye. When you see the shadow people, you have this feeling of dread and even gloom. But we are on our way to a very nice house a little bit down the street. We're going to be passing by the artist house. That was the home of a famous artist, Eugene Otto. But someone else, a little more famous than Eugene, lived inside of the home as well. And that is Robert. Well, Robert the doll used to sit all the way at this attic turret window. They sat him right in front of it. And he looked out of this window day in and day out. Children refused to walk past his home. They didn't want to look up there and see Robert's beady eyes looking down at them. There were workers inside of the home remodeling. They claimed that tools were being moved or that Robert was changing positions while their backs were turned. They don't have Robert inside of this home anymore. They took him out to a fort for safekeeping. But, well, the artist house today is a guest home here in Ki-West. You can come back to the Ki-West and stay in Robert's old home. They even let you stay all the way in the attic room. Sounds pretty fun, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No, you know a little bit.
I would do it. Now the house is quite popular. Lots of, always no vacancy there, but maybe you can make some calls and stay there tonight. We're turning on Eden Street right now. The artist house is going to be coming up on your left side. This beautiful Victorian gingerbread home, and it's got purple trim. And like I said, Robert the doll sat all the way at the attic turret window. All the way up.
Which window?
That attic turret window. So the attic is the only one that goes up, you know, past the house.
Yeah? How cool is it? Check it out, right? No?
And that CD seems to be skipping now. Yeah, because he's playing that safety message on the board. Now, if you keep looking on over to your left, past the Ki-West Theater here, through the trees and through the bushes on the corner is the Memorial Gardens for St. Paul's Episcopal Church. Take pictures. This is our first abandoned burial ground on the island that we're on the tour. Now, St. Paul's Episcopal Church is the fourth one built on the same piece of land. They wanted to put this fourth church over top of a graveyard. Now, that wasn't a very good idea to put a church over top of dead bodies, and one by one, these bodies were dug up, moved to the new Ki-Uwest cemetery. And that's really nothing that I would have done. You see, if you dig up dead bodies, spirits will tend to return. Families were buried here. Children, the residual energy lies around that angel statue up there in that corner that I pointed out to you. You'll hear the pitter-patter of their feet sometimes and hear their laughter. St. Paul's does have one gentleman buried underneath of the church, John Fleming. He used to own this land, and Mrs. Fleming donated the land to the church, but she said Mr. Fleming needed to stay there forever. Forever is quite a long time. And he's still there. You can go right inside of the church during the day. They have their doors open. You can look around and you'll find that plaque right where John Fleming lies. But I'm going to move on to the 1880s. There was revolutionary unrest in Cuba. The Cubans were fleeing that, bringing their profitable businesses here to Key West. Cigar manufacturing was introduced, and a cigar manufacturer by the name of Francisco Marrero comes to Key West, builds a beautiful mansion. But he did it for his young love, Enriqueta. They soon had 8 children born into their family, but you know, the ties between Key West and Cuba were very strong for Francisco. He always headed back to Cuba for business, and he did die in Cuba quite suspiciously. Enriqueta, she is mourning the loss of her husband, but she did get a knock at the door. It was Maria, who was Francisco's first wife from Cuba, whom he never divorced. Maria, she is here mourning, and she's on a mission. Goes to court, wins Francisco's estate, and kicks Enriqueta and her 8 children out on the streets to live the rest of their lives penniless. Before Enriqueta left the home that she loved, she vowed to stay there in spirit, which was a promise kept. This is a beautiful Marrero mansion on your right. Nice little purple shutters, but it's a nice guest home as well, just as the artist's house. You can come back to Key West and stay in it. Be careful of room 17 and 21. That used to be the nursery for the Marrero children. The residual energy of the crying and the laughter have been heard inside of those rooms. The room 27 used to be Enriqueta's own bedroom. Guests will walk inside of their room and see a woman brushing her hair at the table dressing mirror. Enriqueta might still be in the home, waiting for Francisco to return. But if you start to look over to your left, and you can also look up, because it is one of the tallest buildings that we have here in Key West. Right up here on the corner is the La Concha Hotel, here on your left. It was built in 1926, and ever since it was built, it's had a lot of scandalous activity. They had an observation deck at the top, and with that, 13 people have leapt to their deaths, one of them being an embezzling lawyer. In more recent years, 1982, a worker by the name of Brett Hostra was cleaning up on the 5th floor after a New Year's Eve party. He loaded his cart full of dishes and took it over to the elevator. When he backed the cart on into the elevator, he fell all the way down to the shaft to his death. The elevator didn't meet him there. They will still hear screams down that elevator shaft in the dead of night. But we have made it to Hardy Duval Street, and up the road we'll be passing by the oldest house. The oldest house was the home of Francis Watlington and his wife Emmeline, where they had 9 children. All 9 of them were girls. And while this was in the 1800s, yellow fever was spreading quite rapidly. One of the children became ill with the dreaded fever, and, well, she quickly died. Miss Emmeline, so distraught from the death of her daughter, another one became ill with the dreaded fever. She didn't know what to do. She rocked her second child until she too took her last breath. Inside of the oldest house is where cases of the caretaker has heard the rocking very slowly back and forth, as if Emmeline is still inside of the home grieving the losses of her children. Well, the oldest house is coming up to your left. It has a porch light on, and if you take a look at the second floor, all the way to the right at the smallest window is the room where they hear the rocking noises. And you can take a tour of this building during the day for free. The caretaker during the day who takes you through has a lot of very interesting stories about the home and the Watlington family. But up next, you will be passing by the House of Orbs. If you haven't been taking photos, maybe you should start taking pictures now. The House of Orbs is someplace you can visit on your own. The 1830s Grand Porter Mansion, the home of Dr. Joseph Yates Porter. Yes! We use what I found! Yeah. Dr. Joseph Yates Porter, Florida's first health official. He was a local hero here in Ki-West. He tried to eradicate that dreadful disease and treated lots of cases of yellow fever right inside of his home. Dr. Porter was born in the home. 80 years later to the day, he ended up dying in the same room that he was born in. Well, there are 2 bars on the first floor of the Porter Mansion. You can go inside of those bars. Ask your bartenders if they have any Dr. Porter stories, because I'm pretty sure that they will. But here's the House of Orbs to your left. Beautiful green home right on the corner. It does have a lot of lights there in the front yard. Don't be mistaken, they are not orbs. But up on the second floor, those are apartment rooms. Renters will have all of their windows and their doors shut, but will still feel a cold breeze that will flow through. They believe that Dr. Porter is still inside of his home, trying to cure the incurable. But we are on our way to our first location of the night, our first museum. Not even 10 minutes or 15 minutes into the tour, and I'm going to make you get off. We'll be going inside of a remake of an old salvage warehouse used for shipwrecking.
What?
Shipwrecking was a very big industry here in Ki-West, where ships wrecked upon our coral reef very often. Men would race out to those ships, and basically the first person aboard would own it. They'd sell the stuff off of that ship and make new stuff out of that ship. A lot of money was made by doing that. They made a lot of warehouses around town to store all of these things that they're accumulating off of these wrecked ships. They're getting things like furniture and spices, material, treasure even. Now they even took very small rickety boats called sloops out there to these wrecked ships. And we'll be pulling into Mallory Square where our museum is sitting and waiting for us. We'll be going inside of the Shipwreck, Treasures Museum. How many of you have been inside of the Shipwreck Treasures Museum? Was it today? No. Well, Mallory Square, the heart of Ki-West pretty much. You, go to watch the sunset. Wow. And the aquarium's inside of Mallory Square. But trust me, if you haven't gone inside of the shipwreck during the day, I think all of you should. Alright, are you all ready to go inside of the Shipwreck Treasures Museum?
Yes!
Yes! Doomed!
Sort of.
No, you're doomed.
Hey, can we get some milk? Okay, I need some milkshakes. I'm just getting milkshakes and some milk.
Alright, follow me. Now notice the tower that's all the way on top of the shipwreck.
the outside.
Outside what kind of? So that's probably the better side.
Down around the banister, either side, it doesn't really matter. How are you guys doing back there? Down around the banister, either side. How are you guys doing back there? Hear everything? All right. Welcome to the Shipwreck Treasures Museum. Awful dark in here. But we do have all 4 different types of hauntings inside of this museum. All of them have been experienced by, some people, workers, even visitors. And, well, we believe that it might be due to one tragic incident that ended up happening here. This place was built to remodel or reenact the shipwrecking days, but that was in the 1800s. This incident happened here on July 1st, 2008, where the shipwreck was all closed down. Everything was locked, alarms were set, and the alarm company, well, they got a notification that alarms were going off at the top of our tower. But they didn't call police. The museum manager wasn't even notified. Nobody came by to see what was the matter. And all the workers came in the morning where they had no idea what had happened that night, so they're doing their routine. Always take the American flag and they hoist it all the way up top in the tower. They get the museum ready for visitors. So the worker took his flag, started walking up all of the stairs. It was somewhat of a different morning because when he got to the top of the tower, he did find this tragic incident. And this is a poster board of the newspaper article that came out the next day about what happened at the top of the shipwreck here. Take a photo of it, read it later on. It's somewhat dark in here to read it now. But we did place a wreath above in our tower in hope that maybe somebody would find peace. But we believe that that might not be the case. Not even 2 days after this incident, the museum manager was in here locking the place up, redecorating a little bit. He looked up to the wall and saw a shadow, which he's a pretty tall guy. He honestly thought that it was his own shadow. But as he kept on walking, or he stayed stationary, the shadow, it started to move. He described it as being very tall, reaching out, being very spider-like. He ended up talking to the workers about it the next day. The workers said that they've seen the same exact thing. They've seen it multiple times where they've actually given it a name. They've called it Daddy Longlegs. Well, once again, Daddy Longlegs had been seen, and then he went away for months. Nobody had seen him for a long time. And once again, the shipwreck was all closed down, and about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, alarms were going off. But the alarm company did call police. The museum manager was notified, and people came through. Well, they searched high and low, but there was still nobody inside. Couldn't figure out why the alarms had set off. The museum manager reset them and locked it back up. But he didn't go back home and back to bed for no more than 30 minutes before the alarms were going off again the same night. So everybody had to come back for the second time, and they split up. There was somebody watching the perimeter, a policeman downstairs in our basement area, and a policeman upstairs, where the museum manager took to the top of the tower. The second time that these men were inside of the shipwreck is when experiences started to happen. They were experiencing loud banging on the walls. The policeman upstairs said that it would come from all 4 walls at the exact same time. He radioed out to the policeman outside. The policeman quickly came back to him and said that it was all clear. He did his rounds outside and didn't hear any banging, and there was nobody around the shipwreck at all. But the policeman downstairs in our theater area, in the basement, walked inside of a cistern room that we have to see a shadow moving around in a corner. He kind of described it as being in the shape of a man, but it was moving very slowly, like it was struggling. The policeman got a little bit closer, and the shadow just basically stood up, booked it into a wall, and the policeman booked it up these stairs and out that door. He didn't stay inside of the shipwreck any longer, didn't want to. After he ran out, the policeman upstairs ran out. 3 policemen were outside talking about their experiences. The museum manager finally came down from the tower, started resetting the alarms, and remembered the date, where it was July 1st, 2009. It had been a year since that tragic incident on the top of our tower, and every year around the 1st of July, this will tend to happen, where alarms go off for no apparent reason and banging on the walls. We've heard that during tours. Even sometimes footsteps along this balcony. And, well, this past year on July 1st, lightning struck the top of the tower. Took out power here in Ki-Uэst all the way up to Big Pine Key for 5 hours. It was a long night. So, we do have weird incidences that happen inside of the shipwreck where the workers are basically used to it, and sometimes even visitors will see those shadows. But it doesn't make any sense to walk into this museum and not see any treasure, right, sir? Yep, right.
Absolutely.
Did you touch it? No. Did anybody touch it?
No, definitely didn't.
Well, the shipwreck is home to this 64-pound silver bar. And this silver bar was found wrecked on a ship in Ecuador. A lot of other treasure with it. And so a fleet of ships found it. One of the ships was Nuestra Señora de las Maravillas, the Lady of Marvels. They took all of that treasure, taken over towards Spain, back to the Queen. But these 3 ships encountered a massive winter storm. The storm was so big that it spun the fleet around. The top ship ended up colliding with the Lady of Marvels all the way in the back, went straight through her hull. Both captains knew that all hope was lost. The priest on board, Father Diego, was told he needed to start talking to the men, hear their confessions, give them their last rites. Father Diego did what he was told, but he could only talk to so many men. The ship broke in half. The Lady of Marvels was going down to her watery grave and taking anybody with her. Out of 650 men, only 45 survived. 45 being Father Diego and the 44 men who he heard their confessions. Cursed treasure, it did sink a lot of ships right after that as well. But you know what? If you want to come over here and touch it, you're more than welcome to. Rich piece of history right here, 1656. Still has markings on the top of it. But you won't be cursed yourselves. The only thing that's saving all of you is the ground that you stand on. You decide to take this silver bar out of its casement, put it on a ship towards Spain, you won't get too far. Don't be afraid. If I can lift it, you guys can lift it. But none of you have been inside of the Shipwreck Treasures Museum. It's a little bit sad. I think you should visit. Lucky for all of you, I have coupons. Coupons, as I like to call it. But $5 off each person in your party. Not a bad deal at all. We're taking our tour tonight. You can see a lot of other treasure that's inside here. Learn about the wreck and history. Even climb all the way to the top of the tower. I promise you the shipwreck does have a lighter feel during the day. But if you want to keep on here to the Shipwreck Treasures Museum for those $5 off, you have to ask me at the end of the tour. Even come autographed. Back to the trolley of the dude. safety of the trolley of the doomed. Just remember what Alfred told you in the beginning. You gotta keep your arms, heads, legs inside of this trolley at all times, you know. If they get lopped off, we can't even stop to retrieve it. Yeah, sorry. As we leave the Shipwreck Treasures Museum, just a little bit down the street is the Audubon house. Now, a nice wrecker was the one that built his house, Captain John H. Geiger. Captain Geiger was a master wrecker, he was a harbor pilot, and had 12 children. Now, a lot of people believe that Captain Geiger might have also been Pirate Geiger. Wanted a lot more money than what the wrecking industry was giving him. So they believe that maybe Pirate Geiger has buried a lot of loot inside of his yard, to the back and to the side of his own house. They see a man pacing around these gardens late at night. But if you take a look, the Audubon house is here to your left. Now, on the second floor, the right window. Oh, it's Eddie. The second floor, the right window, happens to be the nursery for the Geiger children. They hear a lot of crying and laughter inside of that room, and people will take a tour of this home during the day. They'll instantly feel this sadness inside there. Maybe because 4 of the 12 Geiger children ended up dying on the property. They died, 3 of them in the very room that you're looking at, from the dreadful disease yellow fever. There was a 4th boy who fell from that tree, while his other brothers and sisters just watched him fall. Died on impact. Barnabas will forever be the best host. Oh, he's not listening. So, moving on down the street, we'll be passing by Jackson Square. That was a meeting place for everyone in town. They'd hear news about the island, and, well, that's where the courthouse stood, the old jail, and even the gallows. In the time of 1924, Ki-Uэst has a lot of cultures, and everybody gets along here. There is a gentleman by the name of Manolo Cabeza. Everyone in town called him Isleño, which means islander. Well, Isleño, he's very much in love with this lovely lady, Angela, who happened to be an Afro-Cuban lady of the night. But she received his love, and she decided that she was going to quit her nighttime job, and she lived with Isleño as man and wife. But there were a lot of people in town who weren't very tolerant of that type of thing. So, as Angela and Isleño were sleeping in their apartment one night, cars pulled up down the street. 5 or 6 hooded men got out of those cars and had baseball bats, where they broke inside of Isleño's door, they beat him up, they tarred and feathered him, left him out on the streets to die. The brutal message from these men were to stop living with Angela, she of African and Cuban blood. But they didn't kill Isleño. With a ruptured kidney, he takes an army-issued Colt revolver. He's going out to find what he believes is a ringleader of some sorts, William Decker, Saul Decker. They're driving down Duval, but their cars would pass each other. He leaned out and he just shot him dead. Dead in the head. But Isleño did just kill him in cold-blooded. The deputy had to take Isleño to the old jail, but he did say that he would protect him. The building that's here to your right used to be the old jail. Now, if you were to go up this little road right here, right down the street is a white wall. That is right where those gallows stood. This is Jackson Square here, folks. And, well, as Isleño was sleeping in his cell that night, cars pulled up right down that street. Men got out of those cars and walked inside of the jail without any problems. Well, they didn't see anybody watching Isleño's cell, and they found it mysteriously unlocked. They finished the job this time. They beat him to death, drug his dead body to their cars, took him to a remote part of the island, and they hung him on a coconut palm tree. Cowardly overkill, I'd say. But the building across from us now to the right used to be the courthouse. In the court, they basically said that this was all done by an unorganized group unknown to us, where no arrests were ever made for Isleño's death. But justice, it does prevail. And it's not exactly the legal kind, but you know, Angela, she will get justice for her man her way. She draws upon her Afro-Cuban heritage. She turns to Santeria. And It's a lot like voodoo, but it is a lot darker. She has to do a little ceremony. Light some candles, sacrifices a chicken, mixes around the blood and the bones, calls out to the Orishas, death to those who harmed my husband. Now each Orisha, who are divine entities, they pick the time, the place, and the method. For the first guy to go, went out on a fishing trip and nobody ever saw him again. Revenge. Second guy, tuberculosis, incurable. Revenge. Third guy, blown to pieces in a dynamite accident where he was the only casualty. I think you all know what to say now.
Coincidental.
Revenge.
Oh, it's way off.
The fourth one.
It doesn't even rhyme.
No, it didn't. So, what happened to him? Oh yeah, he takes his boat out to sea, fell off the boat and didn't know how to swim. Natural selection, I like to say, but you all say
Shark
shark attack.
Shark attack.
Howard was the only one that got it right. Well, the fifth one, he takes his boat out to sea and it crashed upon the coral reef and he got caught underneath of it and just got crushed into pieces. Revenge. The sixth guy, the 14 years, those Orishas had to work hard. But he was taken out in a massive hurricane. Nobody ever found his body. Revenge. Angela and her Orishas, they got revenge. Here on your right, behind the banyan tree, is our Ki-Uэст Lighthouse. Ki-Uэst Lighthouse is a little bit different than most lighthouses. Anybody know why?
Built in two phases.
Say that again?
Built in two phases.
It was
Built in
built-
two places.
It's inland.
Two different sections.
Oh, okay. It's inland is what I was looking for.
Yeah, that's what I said.
We know our history about the
I
lighthouse.
said it twice.
We paid attention.
We never listened.
And the first lighthouse that stood all the way down here at the end of this street, right down there by the water. So our second lighthouse isn't protecting any dangerous shores that we would have here in Ki-Uëst. It's the second one. The first one was taken out in a massive hurricane. You see, this part of the island was very remote. Nobody came out here to this side because there was nothing. Just a lot of sand dunes, a lot of mangroves. Just the lighthouse and the old settler cemetery at the end of the street. In 1846 is when the Great Havana Hurricane roared upon these straits of Cuba. It took out the lighthouse with 200-mile-per-hour winds. What kind of category would that be?
Revenge.
That was a good one, sir. 5. Inside of that lighthouse, taking refuge, was Barbara Maberty, the lighthouse keeper. Her and her 6 children were trying to keep safe, but what the winds did not take, the sea reclaimed. Washed out to sea those poor children of Miss Maberty's. And Barbara, she survived the tragedy. She became the first lighthouse keeper for the new lighthouse, and she stayed there until she was 80. But the old settler cemetery that I mentioned was destroyed as well. That hurricane dug deep, brought up the bones, and the winds, they hurled them all around Whitehead Spit, scattered them everywhere. Not even fully decomposed bodies were scattered everywhere. Imagine coming out of your homes, seeing all this destruction that the hurricane left behind, but not only that, seeing bones lying everywhere. Intestines hanging out of trees, arms. The locals had to pick it up. They gathered all of these bones together. Whose bones? No one really knows. But they were placed in a mass burial that wasn't even marked or documented on where they put it. Lucky for all of you, being a gravedigger as myself, I have some very good insights. I started to place my dead right along the beach. It all started with yellow fever victims. We wanted to avoid further spread of this disease, even with the dead bodies. We placed them on the outskirts of the island. And it was a lot easier than the middle of the island with all the coral rock. That's very hard to excavate. And coral rock graves were only about 2 to 3 feet deep. So we did this over for 150 years. Imagine walking here on this side of the island. You truly don't know what's underfoot. Our beaches, they came up a lot further than where they are now. Imagine Ki-Uëst without all the wonderful resort homes. A local man recalls putting in the sewer lines for these resort homes, finding all of these graves. They just moved the bones over to the side and kept on digging. Commodore Porter and his mosquito fleet A lot of his men were buried out here on these beaches of Ki-Uэст when his men died. Yes, we are the doomed! And honestly, if you like to visit the beaches here in Ki-Uэst, I really wouldn't stick your toesies too far in the sands. You never know what could come up. You definitely go home with a true Ki-Uэst souvenir. That could happen. But there is a mass burial over here on this side of the island that we do know about. You see, in 1860, there were Navy vessels all around Cuba. They were looking for ships that were carrying human cargo because the African slave trade was thriving. A lot of the ships were American-owned and they were flagged. The Navy vessels were successful. Ended up capturing 3 ships around Cuba. They ended up capturing the Wildfire, the William, and the Bogota. What they found inside of the holds were a little over 1,400 African children who were very, very sick. They were dying. They were all in deplorable conditions and they needed help. All 3 of these ships were towed to Ki-Uэst. The 1,400 African children were introduced to our island, and the island doubled its population. Our U.S. Marshal Fernando Marrero was given all of these children who had no advance notice that they were coming. He had no time to prepare for them, no time to gather up supplies or food or clothing. He stuck them over at a new fort that we just finished building, Fort Zachary Taylor. But that is when the locals got together. They took it upon themselves. They brought in their own goods and their own services needed to keep these children alive. With all the sickness that started on the ship, it continued here on the island, where 295 of those children ended up dying here. We do have a little over 1,000 of them left, and there are ships making their way back to Ki-Uэst to pick them up and take them back to Africa. So those 1,000, they made it back to their homeland. The 295 were placed in coffins, placed on a remote beach and in the sand. Everybody forgot about that location until a year later. Do any of you know what started in 1861? The Civil War. So we wanted to build more forts on the island. The Martellos, the East and the West Martello. Plans for the West Martello were to be put right over top of those African children, right over top of their graves. And excavations dug deep started revealing all of these bones, and they moved them. All the ones that they could find. Placed them in another unmarked grave. No recognition at all. So, the fort was built. They didn't even complete it. That's when the West Martello was built, and it's now kept up by the Ki-Uэst Garden Club. You can actually visit it during the day. And 150 years passed after 1862, and well, they've ended up finding a very old map of the beach. They saw what could have been an extended version of this burial. They wanted to see if there was still more here. They were allowed to use ground-penetrating radar, and they found 15 bodies that were still intact. So they finally built the beautiful commemorative marker for the African children. On the right is the West Martello, and right after it is the marker that they put for the African children. They made it into a map. Africa's on the left, Florida's on the right. When you look in the middle of this this marker, you can see a lot of ovals around the compass in the middle, and the ovals, they mark where the bodies lie. These Africans are now getting the respect that they deserve. So if we could have a moment of silence for them, please. Passing by the West Martello, we're just going to make our way out to the East Martello now. The East Martello is a Civil War fort that they built in 1862. They've made it into a museum now. This museum is run by the Ki-Uëst Art Historical Society. Inside of the museum, you can find a lot of artifacts from the Civil War, spongers, records, and cigar makers. They even found recent history washed up on one of our beaches. They found a small, fragile raft made out of tree branches and out of twigs with a sail made out of coffee sack. It was one of many fragile rafts used by Cubans to get here to Florida through the Florida Strait. That tiny little raft is unknown to us. Hopefully they made it here safely. We are going inside of the East Martello. We're going to go inside so that we can meet Robert the doll. That's where he lives. Now, have any of you heard about Robert? Seen him on TV? He's been featured on plenty of shows, even recently. Just featured on this show called Deadly Possessions from Ghost Adventures. He flew all the way out to Las Vegas to be featured on that show. Zach Bagans opened up a museum there, and he was the first episode. But even more recently, he was featured on this show called Road Trip with Jack and Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne loved Robert the doll. I'll say that. But Robert was taken to a paranormal convention in Clearwater. A lot of people ended up showing to this convention. They wanted to see Robert the doll. So Robert has got a lot of groupies. And somebody ended up taking a photo of Robert with an aura capturing camera while he was there. Robert did have an aura. He was purple on the top and blue on the bottom. But I will explain Robert to you before you get to go meet him. He is this handmade straw stuffed ragdoll with black button eyes. Some say that his eyes are a little bit hypnotizing. He is about 3 feet tall, the size of a 4-year-old, not done by coincidence. Robert is wearing a white sailor suit, innocent looking at first glance. And Robert was a gift to 4-year-old Jean Otto from his companion nanny whenever she was being dismissed from her job. And it does sound like a very nice gift, if you knew the intentions of the nanny. Because I believe that she was trying to get a little bit of revenge. But Eugene absolutely loved that doll. He loved the doll so much that he decided that he wanted to give the doll his own name. Gene's full name was Robert Eugene Otto. He told his friends and he told his family, forever call me Gene and call the doll Robert. This was a connection that was going to last a lifetime. Mrs. Otto, she always saw Eugene playing with Robert. She would even hear Eugene talking to Robert. And if she hung around a little bit longer, she would start to hear a deeper voice being very insistent and demanding. And things started to happen around the house where Mrs. Otto, she would find clothing torn. She'd go to Eugene about it, but he always would tell her that Robert did it. Toys were broken. Eugene said Robert did it. Servants were locked out of the house. Robert did it. Servants were even locked inside of closets. Robert did it. The connection between Gene and Robert got a little disturbing. Mrs. Otto banished Robert to the attic room, and Gene had to grow up without his doll. But he became a famous artist. He traveled the world. He went to Paris, met and married his lovely wife Anne. And when Anne, they moved back to Ki-Uwest, and it was his wedding gift to Anne, his own childhood home. Anne loved it. She loved the Victorian home, but she just really didn't love what was inside. It didn't take long for Eugene to bring Robert down from that attic room. He wanted Robert to join them as a family. Robert wasn't very into Anne, and Anne didn't like Robert either. A lot of people have believed that Eugene became abusive towards Anne. One night, they ended up having police shown up at the house. They did it for a wellness check, and they found Anne locked inside of a closet. What do you think Eugene said whenever he was questioned by the police?
Robert did it.
Robert did it. And Eugene, he died in 1974. Right after his death, Anne sold the house. She moved far away from Gene, far away from Robert. Well, she moved far away from Ki-Uwest. Gene was dead. Now, the new owners of the home, they found Robert all the way in the attic room. They thought that he was an antique, so they wanted to take him to the East Martello Museum, thought he'd be safe there. We're going to be going right on inside of that Civil War fort. I just won't be taking you all through the front doors. We're all going to go through the dark side. I'll take you right through the big back gates and take your belongings with you into the museum. You never know what can happen. Everybody needs to stay together as a group because there's always safety in numbers. You don't leave each other, you don't leave me. And no smoking inside of this museum because Robert does not like smoking at all. Are you ready to go in and meet Robert?
Yes.
Yes, hell yes.
Way closer to this than
go right on inside of the fort. I'm going to gather everybody together, and then we start to move through. So as we're all gathering together, have your cameras, have your cell phones ready. Take as many photos as you can as we're standing there waiting. A lot of orbs have been photographed around this tree that I'm going to stand you by, and even the wall. Be careful of small, very minute green orbs. Minute, small.
I sleep with dinosaurs at night.
To the right, in between the first lamp tree. To the right, in between the first lamp post and the tree. To the right, in between the first lamp post and the tree.
Over there?
Hell yeah, let's go find him.
Do you see my ship and my crew? Smashed to pieces up on the reef. In the hurricane of 1846, while searching for the sunken Spanish galleon, Our Lady of Marbles, my body lost. Follow me through the port grounds. The East Martello was built in 1862. One of three communication plates upon this island. Its walls are 8 feet thick. The ground you are traversing on now were used as military exercise grounds for the Union men. It was also used as a mountain. The building to your left is what we call the city hall. It was used as the RP1. You see, we have all 4 types of hauntings in this.
We have a bad connection here.
Gather round, gather round. You see, Robert? Be a equal. Rule number 1, be respectful. Introduce yourself. Robert. Rule number 2, ask permission before you take any photograph. And rule number 3, to the casement. To the right. He's always the fish starting night. What do you say, folks? That's impossible, you see. You're up here in the outcome. You didn't like it. These are car issues and please. Cemetery stones in a museum. Any guesses?
You made me shit my pants.
These cemetery stones actually we two different names.
Read the lines we close. So that's the
One night, the keeper of this museum was walking his on end. The keeper looked over at that wall. He thought he'd seen a handyman. The man did not answer. That's when he decided to take a couple more steps forward. And he realized that the man had saluted him and walked through that very wall. No signers to come here? His blood, but they need to return you to that Trolley. Oh. So everybody is aware that he's now the keeper's word. So during the Civil War,
You're freaking him out for right here. Oh, that's so cool.
You want to spend the night, Robert? Sorry, what? You want to spend the night, Robert? Brown one?
That was hilarious.
It's a lot. Like you'll see them no matter what. Like they're always happening. You just gotta be aware of it.
Driving during
So, back on the trolley of the doomed. We're
Welcome back to the Trolley of the Doomed. Please remember cameras, arms, legs, hands, as well as any bones or body parts you may have. You may feel the need to calm your nerves after your visit with Robert. Alcohol is still prohibited on the vehicle. Before we depart, please look around you and make certain that Robert has not joined us. He has been known to hide beneath the seats.
Nate,
If
what's
you
your name?
feel a pinch or a poke, something brushing past your legs, just remember, Robert did it.
So, I hope you enjoyed walking around through our Civil War fort. Hopefully Miss Lila showed you a lovely lady who is lying in a coffin, right? Yeah? Do you remember her name?
Oh yeah.
Elena Hoyos. This is my favorite story on the tour, so are you all ready for this?
Yes.
It is about graves to people. This is lovely Elena inside of the picture. She was taken to the Marine Hospital close to a... She's sick. Her parents... tuberculosis. Incurable. Elena will eventually die. Working at that hospital that she's at as an x-ray technician is this gentleman here. He is a self-proclaimed German count, and he likes to call himself Count von Cosel. Well, Count von Cosel's real name is Karl Tanzler. That's Karl with a K. I personally like to call him Creepy Karl. He usually keeps to himself. He tinkers around the electronics and he makes inventions. Karl, he made himself a homemade organ, so he is a little bit weird, but very smart. He writes a lot in his memoirs, and he writes about everything. He stated the day that he laid eyes on Elena, he said that it was love at first sight. So every single day, whether it was at the hospital or at her own home, Karl is visiting her. He's giving her gifts, doting on her, asking her to marry him. Which is a little bit strange, counting on the really big age difference we're looking at here. Elena is 22 and Karl is just old. It really wasn't meant to be. Yes, we are the doomed! Drive-by dooming. So, he's doting on her, giving her gifts, asking her to marry him, which is strange. The really big age difference is just a little unsettling for me, but it wasn't meant to be. Elena did pass away at the age of 22. It was a couple of days before Halloween. It was 1931 whenever she passed away. Karl was absolutely heartbroken. So they agreed, and Karl had this mausoleum built for her. It's huge, it's beautiful, and it's extravagant. He visits her. He'll sit right outside of this mausoleum and he would talk to Elena every single night. Only at night. Now, if you were to sit down and read Karl's memoirs, you would read in there that Elena, she started to talk back to him. Yes. So, he said that she said to take her out of this prison. And if that's true, I don't know why Elena would want to leave. Took Elena out in April 1933. So home and
Wood chipper.
first I've heard of that. Oh, Karl had plans for Elena actually. His first location. This airship was sitting at the hospital until the hospital got a new director and really didn't like the sight of this strange contraption and made Karl move it. Everyone who worked at this hospital said that it smelled really, really bad. They really didn't know what was inside, but he got away with that one, able to tow it over to a remote beach called Rest Beach. But I actually like to call that beach Rest in Peace Beach, because Elena was still inside. But think about it. Small wingless airship, dead body inside, sitting on the beach and in the sun. Not a good idea there, Karl. He figured it out a little later than sooner. He takes Elena's now decomposing body out of this airship. He takes her over to a home, his own home, Dr. von Cosel's laboratory. He lived on Flagler Avenue and didn't have any neighbors. Nobody lived around him. Nobody was going to know or smell that he had a dead body in his home. But all good things come to an end. Houses are being built, people move in around him, and his neighbors quickly find out that he's not a normal person. They are always hearing organ playing throughout all hours of the night. Even rumors are spreading around town, and they get back to Elena's sister, Nana. She feels that something's not right. She goes to visit Elena at her on his door, and Karl answers. He kindly let Nana right on inside and said, "Her sister, Elena. She was wired so that she can keep her composed dead bodies." Cops were called. They find Elena in Karl's bed. Karl, he has nets all around this bed to keep bugs. Now,
23 years.
years.
He was killing it.
And well, the statutes from the... That's not right. Probably why. So Elena, she was taken to a new grave, secret, unknown, and nobody knows that location even still today. But as for Carl, he had a wife and child the whole time, and after he was kicked out of Ki-West, well, he goes back to his wife and child up in West Central Florida, Zephyr Hills. He's selling postcards of Lena and photographs. He even starts to write and publish romantic fiction novels. And these are just like romantic fiction novels, like the ones with Fabio on the front of them. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
50 Shades of Dead.
Yeah, 50 Shades. So, Carl was found dead in 1952. He was slumped over a remake of Elena's body. Was it a remake? Or was it Elena herself? Is that really Elena in her secret grave, where we don't know with that tattoo? Go look. Was she really with Carl all that time? Dun dun dun. That's my key weird story. Pretty weird, wasn't it?
Very weird.
Yeah.
100% true. Just don't steal dead bodies, people. That's the moral of the story. Yeah. Well, right after our story about grave robbing, I'm sure you remembered a little bit about the fort where a lot of soldiers were stationed there. This was during the Civil War, during the time of a lot of spread of disease. Yellow fever was hanging around, and mainly the soldiers were the ones to die from yellow fever. Just a little bit down the street, we're going to be passing by a military garrison. Where this garrison had all the comforts of home for these soldiers. There was a hospital, stable, barracks, and even a burying ground. With all of these soldiers dying left and right from yellow fever, they were buried there. Now, this dreadful disease, it wasn't anything to mess around with. It would start off like any other flu symptoms. You get a lot of chills and a lot of coughing, but it would take a turn for the worse. Bleeding from every hole in your body. You would be snotting blood, crying blood, and hearing blood, and vomiting blood out of your pores. They tried to cure this deadly disease with homegrown remedies. These were remedies with ether or turpentine. Nothing that I would eat or drink, so if the remedies, well, if the fever didn't get you, those remedies definitely would. As I said, all of the soldiers were dying left and right from this disease, and in the military garrison, their burying ground quickly filled up. They couldn't fit any more bodies. Where their solution was to dig the soldiers up. They're going to be put on the USS Tug and taken to a new grave up in Pensacola to be reinterred. 447 bodies were dug up here. But when these men made it to Pensacola, only 421 bodies were reinterred. They ended up calling this the Ki-Uwest mix-up. We are missing over 20-some bodies here. And we have no idea what had happened. Maybe we miscounted here in Ki-Uwest, or maybe the Tug encountered a storm and needed to lighten the load, throw some bodies overboard. The Ki-Uwest mix-up will forever remain a mystery. But it all happened here. And this lot that's over to your right, little white picket fence, there's nothing on top of it, just one primitive marker there in the middle. We do capture orbs a lot here in this yard, so take photos. Pretty much where bodies are dug up, their spirits tend to stay around. Now, we've been here on this island for over 150 years. We have developed our own culture. I like to call it conch culture. I'm sure you've heard that people who are born in Ki-Uwest are called conchs. Way back in the day, a lot of you would put queen conchs on a stick. And sometimes it would come with a pink or a yellow, no, not a yellow, a blue ribbon. Now, they put that queen conch in the front of their yard because they just had a baby born into the family to let all the neighbors know that there's a new bundle of joy in the family. So that's how we coined the term conchs. Keeman Howard over here, he's our own conch of the island, born and raised here, and proud of it. If you've walked around in Ki-Uwest, you've seen our beautiful conch homes, you might have noticed a lot of the ceilings, porch ceilings, are painted blue. Do any of you have your own porch ceiling painted blue? No one? But you at least noticed it, right? Perfect. People will do this for multiple reasons. It will keep birds or bees from making nests up in that porch ceiling there, but a lot of people will paint their porch ceilings blue to represent water. say you've heard that spirits cannot cross water. Painting your porch ceiling blue, but not just any blue, it's called haint blue. Haint. And haint is a Gullah word, a language coming from the South Carolina and Georgia. Haints or haunts won't cross the threshold of your house when you paint your porch ceiling blue. So we're turning on 8th Street right now. A lot of houses on this street do have their porch ceilings blue. A lot of the houses are going to be coming up on the left first. So pay attention closely. You can do this to your own home. This house here to the left has their ceiling painted blue. Benjamin Moore, Sherwin Williams, they all sell this haint blue. So just do a little ceremony first. You can rid the spirits out and then go paint your porch ceilings blue because you can just trap them right inside. Defeat the purpose right there. So my favorite house is going to be coming up on your left as well. They have very bright porch lights, and so you can see that haint blue up top very easily. But don't worry, for everyone on the right, this double decker is going to be coming up on the corner. Both of their ceilings are painted blue. It's double protection. But as we start to make the corner, there's a porch light up on the second floor towards the back corner where you can see that haint blue shining on the siding there. But as we ventured to the other side of the island so that we could see Robert the Doll, we just as easily made it back into town. This is the old town of Ki-Uэst, and we are in the historic seaport. I don't think a lot of you fine folk would adventure around here in the early 1900s. This area was a lot of bars, a lot of gambling rooms, friendly ladies, and cockfighting, and a lot of bordellos. Well, the shrimpers would come into port over here. They were tough men. They loved to swarm these streets and go straight to the bars. They had a lot of cold hard cash. Now their favorite bar to go to is just a little bit down the road. It was the Red Door Saloon. A lot of people in town had a different name for it. They called it the Bucket of Blood. And they called it the Bucket of Blood because a murder would happen inside of this bar almost every single night. If you went inside of this bar and didn't have a weapon, they'd give you one to make it a fair fight. So that's bar. It's just not a bar anymore, guys. It's now a ladies' boutique. Still pretty dangerous inside there, you ladies. Now, back in the day when it was a bar, they had a brothel up on the top. They remodeled that top space, ended up finding very old, dusty wallets inside of the walls. The mistresses, they were pickpocketing them in. But here's the Red Door Saloon to your left, our ladies' boutique. And, well, upstairs on the second floor, they're apartment rooms now. Those renters have claimed to wake up in the middle of the night to their beds shaking. I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, I know.
But we will be going to our last guest home on the tour. Just a little bit down the street is the Cypress Bed and Breakfast. The home of Miss Grace Kemp back in the 1800s. She was an older lady. She hired herself a caretaker, Mr. Noseby, and Mr. Noseby would ride his bike into town every day to take care of her. And yes, we are the doomed! And every night before he would leave, he would deadbolt all the doors shut so that she would be safe inside. So Mr. Noseby, some nights it would be stormy. He would stay the night inside of the home and still deadbolt all of the doors shut, but he would lock himself on the inside of the laundry room. And that laundry room is now room number 9 inside of the building of the Cypress House. And it's this house that's here to your right, little white picket fence and the green shutters, the home on the corner. So guess who stays inside of the Cypress House? When they get room number 9, some of them have experienced something quite strange. They left their room in the middle of the night for 5 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, and they left their key inside. Well, when they got back to their room, they found it locked from the inside because Mr. Noseby is going around locking those doors trying to make sure that Miss Grace will be safe. Isn't that sweet? A little inconvenient, but it is sweet. Now, I know we do have some children here on board, but most of you do look of age, so this next part of the tour, I'm going to dedicate it to morbid watering holes. Ki-Uэst is all about the bars, and a lot of these bars are old homes made into these businesses. So you can have hauntings inside of these businesses. A little bit down the street is a bar called Shots and Giggles. And it's this old little home that they remodeled into a bar. Now the owner of this home back in the 1900s was shot down on his front porch. He was thought to be part of the mafia because they left a lot of money bags lying right around his dead body. But the owner of the bar today, her own dog won't go across this very porch. The dog seems to be afraid of something and will growl at things that aren't even there. Shots and Giggles is over to the left, past this little meat carton, right across from the picnic tables. You go inside of the bar at night. Bartender is very friendly. Sometimes her name is Danielle. You might even find your own ghost host there inside of that bar.
Other days changes the name. That's really neat. It's a weird last name.
But a little bit down the street is a more well-known bar, and it's called Captain Tony's Saloon. Captain Tony's Saloon is a little bit special. You see, the bar used to be part of a morgue. The bar even comes with 2 different tombstones, and inside of this bar is what is believed the hanging tree. Now, Captain Tony was ready to expand his bar, but there happened to be a tree in the way, and he was ready to chop it down until somebody said, "No, sir, I think that's the hanging tree." And he built his bar right around that tree, thought of that character. Right below the tree is a tombstone for Reva Sawyer, maybe a family member of mine. But inside of the pool table room, you can find a tombstone on the floor for Elvira Edmonds. It is believed that Elvira Edmonds chopped her husband and child to death with an axe. And she was one of the first people to be hung at that hanging tree inside of the bar. We don't hang anybody from the tree anymore, we just hang bras. You can visit the bar right after the tour, be my guest. Go inside of the ladies' restroom. It is believed that Elvira likes to hang around in the ladies' restroom. You can be freshening up, look into a mirror, see a woman standing behind you in a blue nightdress, standing there as if she would like to talk. The morgue is a part of that pool table room. You can see all of the stone there on the walls. That's part of the morgue there. So, visit Captain Tony's, visit Shots and Giggles right after the tour. But don't forget, a little bit down the street on Caroline Street was that Dr. Porter's mansion. There's a bar inside there. Ask your bartenders if they have any Dr. Porter stories. I know that they will. But here's that bar, Captain Tony's Saloon. The yellow bar with the black trim. Through the first 2 open doors is what we think is the hanging tree. But after Captain Tony's, I am at an end of our journey through the Isle of Bones. I just want to remind all of you, there are places that you can visit during the day. The places that we drove past, such as this house here to your left. It's the Audubon house. You can go upstairs to where the nursery of the Geiger children, you might feel that sadness that's in there. Come back and see in all the wonderful guest homes that I showed you. The Marrero Mansion, the Concha Hotel, the artist house where Robert the doll used to live, Cypress Bed and Breakfast. They'll all be here whenever you come back. Don't forget about the 2 Civil War forts that you went into. You can visit them during the day as well. The West Martello, they let you in there for free, but give the Ki-Uэst Guard Club a nice donation for letting you inside. And the East Martello will give you a discount from taking our tour tonight. Show them your sticker, show them your ghost ticket. $2 off for your entry right there. Robert should remember you all. And well, I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your vacation to join in with us here at Ghosts and Gravestones. That's on the behalf of our driver here, Howard, and even the Ford host, Miss Lila James. My name is Catherine Sawyer. I hope all of you are having a wonderful stay here in Ki-Uëst. And keep exploring. There's a lot of history here. We're going to let Howard off the trolley first. He's going to make sure that it's safe for all of you to disembark. Make sure that Robert didn't follow us home. Oh yeah, as soon as you all get off of Howard's trolley, you're all undoomed.
Y'all enjoy the rest of
You're
your night.
welcome.
Thank you. We need benches for tall people.
Safe travels back to Oklahoma, guys. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining me. You guys have a wonderful night. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. Have a good evening.
Have a great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
guys, hope you had fun.
Yeah.
Joe, I'll do my best, I promise. Bye, guys.